Welcome to Module 6, Designing Your Bitcoin Treasury Strategy. In the past modules, we've explored why institutions are adopting Bitcoin as a reserve asset. We examined real-world examples of corporations and countries implementing these strategies and discussed how it has benefited them. Now it's time to focus on the how. How do you actually go about designing a Bitcoin treasury strategy that fits your unique needs? Because here's the truth, there's no copy-paste template. Designing a Bitcoin strategy isn't about copying what someone else did. It's about building a strategy that fits your goals, your needs, risk tolerance, and time horizon. But a Bitcoin strategy will look very different depending on whether you're a corporation or a nation state. So in this module, we'll walk through both. Let's start with corporations. Adopting Bitcoin as a corporate treasury asset requires a disciplined, multi-step approach that aligns strategic goals with legal, accounting, security, and operational frameworks. The first step is defining your strategic intent. Are you hedging against inflation, diversifying reserves, future-proofing your balance sheet, or using Bitcoin to signal innovation to the market? Once you're clear on the why, you'll need to get internal alignment. That starts with educating and building a strong case for the board of directors and the Treasury Committee. It means preparing a detailed proposal that frames Bitcoin as a long-term strategic asset while addressing perceived risks like volatility, regulatory uncertainty, custodial safety, and accounting treatment. Next, you engage your internal teams: legal and compliance, finance, security, investor relations, internal communications. Each plays a critical role in developing and executing the strategy. Your legal and compliance team should assess counterparty risk, custody agreements, and evolving regulations. The finance team will determine allocation size and purchasing approach and handle trade execution. Accounting will handle how the asset is recorded on the balance sheet. The security team should focus on how to properly custody and protect the asset. And the leadership team as a whole needs to educate all the company's employees on the Bitcoin strategy. Once internal buy-in is secured, the next step is policy and execution. That includes drafting a Bitcoin treasury policy to govern allocation size, rebalancing cadence, and internal controls. It also involves selecting trusted vendors, including trading desks for execution and institutional-grade custodians. Some firms also set up settlement rails that enable secure, policy-controlled movement of funds between approved accounts. BitGo's Go network provides this capability, supporting instant settlement and audit trails while keeping assets under regulated custody. Reporting and audit processes should be clearly defined from the outset. And most importantly, all of this should be paired with transparent and proactive communication, both internally and externally. Boards need confidence in the rationale. Employees need education. Shareholders and credit rating agencies need to understand how Bitcoin aligns with your long-term growth strategy and broader risk framework. If managed well, Bitcoin becomes a multi-generational asset that strengthens financial resilience and even potentially changes a firm's corporate future. Now let's turn to the sovereign playbook. When a nation-state adopts Bitcoin, the calculus shifts. It isn't about quarterly earnings or investor sentiment anymore. It's about sovereignty, energy, and geopolitical leverage. As we saw in the last module, El Salvador, Bhutan, and the United States each approached Bitcoin in a way that aligned with their national priorities. For El Salvador, it was legal tender and a monetary alternative. For Bhutan, it was a tool to monetize stranded energy. For the US, it's becoming part of a broader strategy to retain technological and financial dominance in a multipolar world. But unlike corporations, sovereigns have to think in generational terms. That's why policy permanence matters. An executive order might be a start, but it's not enough. Real lasting strategies require broad political buy-in and legal codification. That means involving more than just the head of state. Parliamentarians, senators, treasury committees, and oversight councils all have a role to play in designing durable Bitcoin legislation. Adopting Bitcoin isn't just a financial decision, it's also energy strategy, trade policy, financial modernization, and technology infrastructure. It touches everything. That's why strategic clarity is so important. Sovereign adoption efforts should begin with clearly defined objectives, whether it's inflation protection, diversifying foreign reserves, or enhancing financial inclusion. These goals inform everything else: how much Bitcoin to hold, how to acquire it, and how to manage it. Each sovereign strategy will reflect unique national priorities, but for any of it to work, governments need to pass clear, binding laws that define how Bitcoin will be acquired, accounted for, secured, and integrated into the economy. That includes decisions like taxation, spending authority, custody models, and disclosure standards. Will Bitcoin be treated as a currency, a commodity, or a strategic reserve asset? Who has the authority to spend or move it? How will audits be conducted? And what are the rules for disclosure and transparency? These questions lay the foundation for a credible and sustainable governmental Bitcoin policy. Governments also need robust operational policies. That includes defining allocation thresholds, rebalancing rules, acquisition methods, and which entities or officials have the authority to execute transactions on behalf of the government. Examples are already emerging. El Salvador passed legislation to make Bitcoin legal tender and launched a national framework for custody and wallet infrastructure. Bhutan developed a sovereign mining operation that became a major revenue source. And the US recently created a strategic Bitcoin reserve and is developing legislation around digital asset market structure. Policy tools vary, but the principles are the same. Coordination across agencies is essential. Central banks, sovereign wealth funds, finance ministries, utilities, infrastructure providers, and legal bodies must all be aligned. Critical stakeholder engagement, early and often, is key to internal buy-in and long-term stability. Bhutan's Sovereign Investment Authority worked closely with its Ministry of Finance and central bank to ensure the strategy aligned with national development goals. That kind of cross-functional cooperation is a best practice. Sovereign custody introduces its own challenges. Some countries may opt for internal vaulting solutions under national control. Others may contract with external custodians, raising questions about jurisdiction, insurance, and sovereign immunity. More on this in a later module. Regardless of the model, governments must implement layered contingency planning to account for cyber attacks, custody failures, or extreme market events. Bitcoin may be inherently resilient, but the systems that manage it must earn that resilience through preparation and discipline. Public communication matters too. Citizens need to know why their country is holding Bitcoin. Global investors need to see a coherent, disciplined strategy, and allies and international observers will judge credibility based on how transparent and technically sound the execution is. That also includes financial reporting. Bitcoin reserves should be reflected in balance sheet disclosures and subject to independent reserve audits. While sovereigns aren't bound by private sector accounting rules, voluntarily aligning with standards like FASB fair value treatment can promote transparency and improve credit ratings. Tax and legal policies must also be clearly defined. Legal teams should proactively address compliance with anti-money laundering, know your customer, and international financial integrity standards. As with corporations, smart sovereigns measure the success of their Bitcoin treasury strategy across multiple dimensions: energy monetization, diversification, fiscal resilience, and technological leadership. Whether you're a CEO or a head of state, the principles are the same. Define your goals, align your stakeholders, build your infrastructure, and execute with transparency. Bitcoin is more than a hedge. It's a tool of monetary independence, energy monetization, and digital resilience. And the nations and corporations that design smart strategies today will be the leaders of tomorrow. This wraps up Module 6. Designing a Bitcoin strategy requires clarity, governance, and discipline, but strategy alone isn't enough. In our final module, we'll tackle what may be one of the most critical pieces of all: custody. That is, how to keep your Bitcoin safe.